So suddenly on some days, certain days, in some stores here in France, they only accept credit card and no cash. And by the way, welcome. I really love to watch the little tiny camera of my iPhone because I just imagine that I can look in your eyes because I like, if you watch me, that sounds really freaky. However, so just how I'm thinking. In medicine, you make a diagnosis, first an anamnesis, how the people come in, then you check up with this. Okay, you make a diagnosis of every point, and this diagnosis is taking several symptoms and making a conclusion. And your conclusion can be wrong. That's why you ask for a second opinion, because imagine there's one God and it's not me. And if I'm wrong, I can learn to become better the next time. So, however, we think in medicine that people don't have lice and fleas at the same time and look for symptoms if they have something else in common, maybe. Yeah? And in this video, look at the inflation, the massification of economy, that small business goes down, gets shut down and replaced by bigger businesses or gobbled up, or bigger business can stay open in a certain time while the other gets shut down. The following unemployment or unemployment from other reasons, and war and its war profits, which go on our health risk. The broken family and the centralized digital currency, censorship, loss of rights, and as symptoms, which in global, like having a cold is coughing and so on. This one is simply we get poor, devastation. So what can, as consequence following causality, cause so many different symptoms, or are they separate flies and lies? The electronic cashier in the supermarket mentioned offers me to round up my bill for a good case, and that's usually the good thing of the day, and I just should trust whichever bank this computer uses, because banks are good as simply Bernie Madoff or Ian Baesco or Enron. Because now we have backwork from Lawrence Fink, who secures everything. He makes a specialty of looking what could be risky, and he became a specialist because on one day he lost for Boston First $100 million in the 80s, when that was a lot of money. So he's an expert how to do the go away things, and that now he helps you. The same thing, Bunker is burning down the Amazon forest at the moment, and his firm's Lockheed earned by producing the HIMARS and other arms for the Ukraine. And between that, he stops by in his private jet to check your carbon footprint, evaluates how good you are in your donations that you trusted in the supermarket to a machine. And it's called ESG, and it's very profitable. His other enterprises, McKinsey, famous for defending fentanyl, financed Macron's election campaign and successfully suggested to make Larry's ESG into French law under the initials IRS. It has the word social and sponsor in it, so it must be a good thing, like the good thing of the day in the supermarket debate. Because France doesn't have no longer so much money, we are not told that the working age goes longer and we should retire later, as in 1980, people had access to steady jobs. Statistically, the life expectancy in the 80s also increased. Okay, today it decreased, but it shouldn't be a problem after all jobs went to China, and by law, the same job done by a less competent person can be paid less. There are now 10% or more of the homeless people in France that have a high competence diploma, that is a useful diploma, and the industry claims not to find qualified people, and therefore, because I can't find people, I don't want to see you, but I can't go away. I don't find qualified people, so I have to pay less. Sorry, yeah. It goes so far that now being intelligent is really unattractive because it indicates that you didn't get the job and you have lower income. And I mean, look who became president in our country, in your country, how the overall economy does in your country, in our country. So yeah, it's nice to be stupid. And those people not hired because of competence now on the streets can do this what they do, nothing, for a longer time This will help the economy.
Human beings have 3 arms and 4 legs.
Thus, the incompetent do not get ideas like how to criticize politicians or how to innovate and progress. How else pay the weapons factories of their friend who already got the contracts to rebuild the Ukraine after the war with their bombs, of which 30% already really arrive in the Ukraine, on the side of the Ukraine, and which is the most corrupt state, and nobody in a corrupt environment would sell arms to this enemy, right? Many crises, said Klaus Schwab, in the last World Economic Forum demand the global digital currency and the Great Reset. When you can every day only pay by credit but maybe implanted as a chip, and don't forget the donations, and negative is to try coming up with solutions. Listen.
We need to overcome the most critical fragmentation. And the most critical fragmentation is between those who take a constructive attitude.
Nobody doubts that, as American platforms like Rumble are here in France banned, and genocidal regime platforms like Chinese-based TikTok allowed. Fighting disinformation and misinformation is a tradition by our leaders. France, for example, after Chernobyl, the meltdown in Chernobyl, the state-sponsored France Télévisions explained that radioactive clouds do not like French customs services and therefore make a U-turn at the border. Bon, les douaniers français font pas le blague, hein? So you can't say that the state propagates lies and cracked house on telling the truth. There have been always state media very occupied with that you only tell the right thing, like in Germany was the Stürmer, in Russia was the Pravda, if I remember right. But memory is the origin of disinformation. Heck, in 2019, I thought I could remember that we have an immune system. At the time, that was disinformation. And the Digital Safety Act is a really existing bill by the European Union that will be around working in October 2023. And it will enable the state to decide to get rid of the wrong things. Only good things. Only good things. And it's not federalism like the knight had the right to try out their partner for the first night, because there are no unified titles. And so the upper class, in resetting to foreigners and everyone else as a peasant, they felt good for the aristocracy, but even the French king had to sit under his bed and tinker roses over that. But technological progress will be maintained. We should just, after the Roman Empire first bubble up and then collapse on itself, so all science existed somewhere, for example in monasteries in Ireland, still written in books, and anyone having read their knowledge got put on as a sorcerer on the stake, especially women, got cancelled. So no plumbing, and instead of penicillin that the ancient Greeks had, the all-healing medicine had been beer and piss mixed in Europe, and in the Islamic world they got camel piss. If you believe there's now a group of bankers and corrupt politicians and Western pharma conspiracies, nutjob theorists, okay, well, there is this little thing, World Economic Forum, where all bankers and politicians and pharma industry magnates and rich people meet together under the direction of Klaus Schwab.
We have, if I look at our stakeholders, we have business, of course, as a very important audience, and we have politics, we have continuous partnerships with many governments around the world. And of course we have NGOs, we have trade unions, we have all those different parts.
Media, of course.
Media, of course, and very important experts and scientists and academia.
Klaus Schwab, who comes from a good family because his father was advisor under Adolf Hitler. And they even have the fun idea, which seems a little bit like the cliché to conquer the world. They had their 9th World Government meeting, but they want you to be happy and possess nothing for your own good. They've got now nothing in Sri Lanka. Look, they can really do it. And now that we know that it works to restrict speech and information flow, what about making your own money without telling anyone? Okay, Tao says that you can't hide the sun, the moon, and the truth, but Stalin says you can kill everybody who knows the truth. There's Mrs. Stephanie Kelton, who is the face of modern monetary theory, that is simply a plagiat to Yamashaf's ideas, the Nazi banker with the MEFO bonds. So let's say she is like Microsoft to Apple. In any case, the Federal Reserve of the United States is a bit of a repetition of the shares of Metallforschungs AG. And the Metallforschungs AG was a phantom company that didn't exist, but its integrity was guaranteed by the Nazi state, where they sold the shares, collected the money for the papers, which represented, believe the Nazis. So, coming back to Kelton, who believes in printing money for yourself and using then a policy to create the illusion of having no money to counter inflation, and the illusion of having no money, it's called poverty. Otherwise, money wouldn't be worth anything it everybody has. Why giving goods and services in exchange for something they already have? So they had been, for example, printed by the European Union Central Bank, Princess Lagarde, 750 billion euros in 1 year. Officially, we are 447 million people in Europe, so 1,700 euros for each man, for each woman, for each teenager, and each baby. But announced were 100 euros per worker, and we don't have baby workers here officially. And on my paycheck, I saw noticed a 100 plus and somehow 100 minus, and it was totally zero in the end. So to compare, in 2022, all spending of the French government with universal healthcare subsidizing rent was 308 billion euro, according to the public treasury, or 386. And after the savings of 2 million, that's from 308 billion, 0.002 billion saved while printing money. But for telling that, and before anyone gets angry, we have the Digital Safety Act, so watch as long as you can. The Federal Reserve of the United States doesn't print MEFO papers. No, they print papers called treasury bonds, also guaranteed by the state, only a different one this time. And this document is held by the oil-producing dictators of the world. And to be able to cash them into dollars eventually, the potential oil equivalent is printed in advance. Actually, you print a number on a paper, but say that's only a coupon for another coupon for that somebody has who could change that for oil he might produce. I believe that. He believes fiat, thus fiat currencies. Fiat is Latin then. And that means believe Americans where democracy is when the ruling party is called that. In between its Republicancy, I think. Until President Nixon, the dollar was a coupon that you could exchange for gold that was not could exist or maybe will be produced, but actually existing and stored in a place called Fort Knox. Then Nixon said, believe us, because the club of dictators in the Middle East plus Russia make their bills in dollars for petrol. And practically the dollar becomes a coupon for that. And then we go do everything to abolish oil under Joe Biden. And the next video is about uptaking CO2 by plants over holistic management, which means no profit for Bill Gates' insects, but reverts to green. Other premise of MMT, of Kelton, modern monetary theory, is that those who do not participate have no economic influence if you ignore them enough and shut them off by embargoes from the economy or war. That would be an argument. So what did they say above about Lockheed owned by BlackRock is very profitable. Everything is profitable, focus, profit. In federalism includes the other participants of the free market, that's you. But we tell you that's capitalism. And the third axiom, we can control everything. The information, who needs what, and when he buys something. And well, the last century we believed that. For example, in East Germany was no unemployment, as half of the citizens had been employed to spy on the other half, and it didn't work. But today it's sort of different. There are computers, and a member of the WEF, the World Economic Forum, is Bill Gates, the creator of Windows since the version 98. Everything works without any crash. Just ignore the physics of Lorentz chaos theory or Heisenberg's quantum physics. Then you can know everything at any time. Thus, if you wouldn't know everything, like which charge has an electron, where the Institute of Heisenberg, those little micro things would have a butterfly effect in microelectronics, because micro is little, like a butterfly is very small compared to a tsunami, which is the theory of Lorentz. But truth over facts.
We choose truth over facts.
Well, I'm sick and tired of smart guys.
Right? So instead we have rearming the Taliban, little incursion allowed into Ukraine, and inviting with an understanding how to genocide is a cultural thing for Xi Jinping.
I'm not going to speak out against what he's doing in Hong Kong, what he's doing with the Uyghurs in western mountains of China.
Also, that he also mentioned in the same moment that to be forceful, like a military force unification, like war on Taiwan.
China and Taiwan trying to end the one China policy by making it forceful.
Worked quite well so far, just in case you want to defend yourself. The strategic reserve was sold to China, but boats use now green energy like wind, and that's called sailing. However, when the Chinese didn't do a war yet, but simply block all ships, I think Biden did that. No? Now but there's still a chance that because they can say either we have to do war and look at the next place where our ships like conquer Taiwan, or we can simply show our belly upwards and die. What will they choose? And what about us in the Eurozone? Why do we run as the Federal Reserve prints dollars with them by printing also much? After 2 world wars with their center of origin in Europe, our subcontinent was a ruin, and for counter value for the franc, not the franc africain, but the franc français, for the Deutschmark lira, those could be based on nothing because everything was broke. So we oriented it towards the currency based on physical gods, which was the dollar in 1945, and then all European currencies, how they were already each other oriented and unified towards the dollar, we created the euro. So everything in the world was more or less a reflection of the dollar until the war of Ukraine started. Then we had excluded Russia, and then they made their system BRICS instead of SWIFT, which are banking identifier systems. In this video here, I showed you who is with whom monetary and military a year ago, and now the last contract of restraint against a nuclear pandecid, killing everybody, is cancelled. And in that moment, they noticed a year later, which you already knew from my channel. If the dollar is broken, if nobody believes it, there's no fiat. So they're all fiat currency are broken. And this is a stability of mutual lies, since the dollar no longer is exchangeable for what had worked. Believe they're not MEFO but treasury bonds. Except for the past year, the ruble, rupee, and real and yuan, which have since bought these countries called like crazy and sold them in a orthodox thing that's unaware of these details, because it's only more than half of the world, because we are so important for the United States. If they want government to finance castrating all gays in Pakistan, that's called helping transgender projects print the money. Then to be able to export to the United States, everyone with a fiat currency also prints money to synchronize inflation. And if you didn't get how to hide then that you printed money that is back with nothing, don't start over the video, because you got this memory is disinformation thing just right. If there's new money faster than the production of goods, because everybody is like they did that not only to the pig farms with the 12, also then the relationship, how much money is there for how many goods, changes, and that's then inflation. But for that, it feels like there's no money, therefore are taxes. And you have also moved the jobs to China, no income, no money. Money seems to be scarce, and your self-printed money doesn't burn down its worth. And the goods can be, for equal dollar to euro, be synchronized by inflation and then sold. I mean, the goods from Europe that are produced in China, otherwise there's no scarcity of money in Europe if people could earn that. Therefore, we had the PPT, and then Trump came and people earned money again. It's a free market in competition between free participants like the free workers in Europe and the slaves in China, because free work is cheaper than free workers. Like you're in the dating app cheaper, that became in France just the thing after prostitution became illegal. Coincidence. And if that doesn't do enough to reduce the total of all money, because you suddenly printed too much and somehow how can I put back? So after 2008, people had been angry about the bailout of banks, and now it's totally forbidden to bail out the banks. They have a bail-in. But what was a bailout? Bailout was you pay from your money, you give money to the state, and this money the state takes and gives it to the banks. And now it doesn't happen anymore. Now the bank can take simply your money from your account, and you are also obliged to have an account. It's illegal in France to have more than, I think, 10,000 euro on at home. It became necessary because in just the same year, with 2014, when the bail-in was a thing, we had some terrorist acts, because it's not that they said only for 1 year exceptional was stupid. That we had simply bad luck. And in the same moment when this started to become a law for the bankers, invited Sam Bankman-Fried to the World Economic Forum, who had FTX on the Bahamas, and FTX collapsed. Now the wealthiest outside of the United States had felt discriminated against with the Federal Reserve Treasury bond thing, because they too want to print money to buy themselves projects. Like Macron offers to pay you the solar panels that you install on the roof of your castle if you have a castle. Like everyone has a castle and a private jet, and if he doesn't, then he's a bad polluter and shouldn't exist. So if money is now, everything is digitalized, and money is only a computer code and it's under centralized control in the power of the richest, you cannot hide it, and there's a quicker bailout, for example, and all this is the marriage between CBDC and MMT. Money is distributed to those with nice behavior. Remember in the beginning, the supermarket cashier machine asked for donations to Larry Fink, who surely uses it for a good cause. It appears shortly on the screen on the payment machine, so it must be true. And money is withdrawable from those with an inconvenience issue. The opposition can buy nothing and will slowly die, or simply be so occupied with lies. So, no death penalty, only deadly measures. If you can't believe that, Klaus Schwab considers the ideal model is the CCP. Just make your own CCP version of Marxism.
I respect China's achievements, which are tremendous over the last over 40 years. I think it's a role model for many countries, but I think also we should leave it to each country to make its own decision what system it wants to adopt.
The CCP already had done CBDC and social credit score. Trudeau offers a state assistance for suicide, and they have started to think about obligated assisted suicide in an article of the New York Times. It's like, I'm forcing you to use the guillotine to kill yourself, but there is no death penalty for a murderer. In fact, to reduce overpopulation in prisons, some get out even after 3 years after murder or after a little rape, and then killed Mrs. Knoll. The only error in this one was that Macron thought, after he ordered the press not to say anything about Halimi Traore, that people are desensibilized, but somehow French people still aren't racist. And the CBDC has already started everywhere in France and even in the countries of BRICS. Even Russia announced it, so that means for Gerard Depardieu, the same shit despite moving to Russia. So with the difference that they have over there as countervalue gold, and we have to abolish the petrol from petrodollar in favor of solar panels produced in China, which is the C in the BRICS, and electric cars use batteries produced in China. But the CO2 you would have produced by a diesel after 50,000 miles driving after producing it was already released in China while producing the battery, so don't be sad if you wanted to maintain your carbon footprint. You're still important. Plus, as a polluter bonus to get the lithium ore up, literal borax gets pumped into the groundwater, so you also pollute the groundwater, and then the ore comes up, and then to divide it, you put sulfur acid. Some sulfur goes in the sea to kill the fish, and the fumes then eat up the ozone layer. So you have a triple whopper, and it's very clean, and the European Union obliged you to do that from 2035. Macron was very proud about that, because now by law we go the transition from fuel to coal-driven cars. Germany, for example, has the biggest population and has no sun, but has solar panels, but there's no sun. And then they have some wind panels when there's wind, and when there's no wind, they burn diesel. So it's very nice. And we don't, and they simply stopped also with nuclear because energy producing is cheaper if you totally neglect security. For example, Chernobyl used graphene. Graphene was a technique that was used for an experiment by Fermi in 1920, and 6 years later, Chernobyl blows up. Fukushima was built in the 60s, and then 6 years later blows up. So Germany burns brown coal now to create energy, and that is then loaded into the electric car to become green. All global digital currency dreams included originally China. To maintain China, the origins of the virus we can't name, COVID, aren't investigated. It means now we can say it somehow, except that China, strangely, one could not trust the regime of socialism of the people. Like the people, my nation, my people, like the nation of the Han race, like national socialism. And China, we made it very friendly with Russia. So our global CBDC is limited to the SWIFT zone, like the zone created with the MEFO of Weimar under the Hitler was limited to the Axis powers. For that, the Nazis cancelled membership in the international stock market in 1935. We do now embargoes with Russia, and then they replaced the difficulties with importing from raiding neighbors. Like I think 60,000 barrels are now simply exported from Syria. That between the continental plates is pumped out so much petrol that they bump together, and then you have in Turkey, earthquakes. So, but overpopulation, and so that's the effect if that happened after a group of countries that talked a lot about countries insulated themselves. And how about creating a group of countries and put them in the same situation that they are the baddies and we still get nuked, but we are the good ones? So we have World War III, everybody is dead, but that's their gold standard has no longer a threat to our programmable SWIFT currency. So prolong the war, and each side has its own system to print money for the rich until we die all, and keep inflation down by making money scarce for the majority, create poverty. Except that I mentioned following the chain of logic, Gödel, Heisenberg, Lawrence, and Murphy, total collapse of every computer centralized happens at the worst moment, and everything connected is gone then. Biden had given in the early 2022, before the Ukraine war, a list to Putin which Western cyber targets not to send a computer virus to, because you trust your opponent, which is in the military pact that happens to coincide of the BRICS countries. Among them is also Putin. Will they refrain from using your vulnerabilities? Klaus announced in October 2019 they went 201 by the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation sponsored in pandemic theory based on the coronavirus of a pig will become infectious to humans, and then came a coronavirus. And now the World Economic Forum announces an internet collapse. Klaus WEF is at the heart of the economy of the West, and he called the biggest economy of the BRICS, which is China, his idol. So Hunter Biden's laptop from the Chinese sent 54 millions to the big guy. That's also something. So but he got the line spot of the votes in the dark hours between 1 a.m. and 4 a.m. So it might be only an impossible idea if you do not deny quantum physics, but at least our leaders have principle. Which principle? The principle is simply everybody is dead, and they have been the richest people that ever walked Earth, because after them there's no Earth. If you think that's stupid and evil, it is stupid and evil.